Hello, this is May 19, 2025. I'm here with Taylor Moore, that I've known for over a decade. And he's had a very interesting career and full of stories. And there's one story that I'd like to record today, and that is when Taylor worked for J. Edgar Hoover.
Okay, well, starting with J. Edgar Hoover, my birthday's on August the 4th, and so when I became 18 years old, I could go to work for the FBI, and I could take shorthand. That's another story, but I could take shorthand very fast.
At that time, mostly women were taking shorthand, right?
Yeah, but that's the thing that changed my whole life was the story about the shorthand. But anyway, I could take shorthand very fast. So in El Paso, the special agent in charge was named D.K. Brown.
And you were from Texas originally?
I was from El Paso. I grew up there. And one of the agents grew up in the children's home that my mother raised him. His name was Wally Heitman. And so anyway, Wally wanted me to go to Washington, D.C., just like he had done when he left the children's home. And so that's what happened. Anyway, I was still 17, and D.K. Brown dictated to me as fast as he could, and I could handle his dictation.
And D.K. Brown was who?
Was the special agent in charge of the El Paso office of the FBI.
Got it.
And so the day on August the 4th, what was it?
Would have been 48, something like that?
Well,
After World War II?
I'll figure that out later, but
It was after World War II, though.
what's that?
It was after Second World War.
Oh, sure.
Okay, good.
Maybe the 50s. Okay.
It was in the 50s, yeah. So anyway, I drove to Washington, D.C., and was hired by the FBI as a stenographer.
Okay, and you have a really great story behind how you became a stenographer.
Okay, I was going to school in Wesson, Mississippi at a junior college, which is the last 2 years of high school and first 2 years of college. And I was sweet on a girl named Jayne Woods. And we registered for class in an auditorium, and Jayne went over to sign up for typing. And Miss Thompson, the typing teacher, was a plump lady, maybe 65 years old, with blue hair, very cheery. And she said, "Oh, Taylor, what are you doing that period?" And I said, "Nothing." She said, "Why don't you take typing? You'll use it the rest of your life." And I said, "Well, okay." We get to typing class, and Miss Thompson announced, "Every day, the last 10 minutes, we're going to have a speed test, and you're going to grade each other's paper. And at the end of the semester, everybody, and at the end of the day, everybody that was the fastest moves up a row. And at the end of the semester, everybody in the front row makes a A, the next row makes a B, C, D, so forth." So the next semester, I went with Jayne to see Miss Thompson again, and Jayne was going to register for shorthand. And Miss Thompson said, "Why don't you register for shorthand?" I had no way. And she said, "I guarantee you'll make an A." And I said, "Well, I can't turn down an A." And so I signed up for shorthand, we went to the first shorthand class, there must have been 30 to 40 girls and me. And I was hiding in the back of the class, and Miss Thompson started the class by calling on me. And she called me to the front of the class. And I said, well, I didn't buy the book. And she told me she wanted me to write the brief forms on the book. I said, well, I didn't buy the book. She said, that's okay. And she wrote them on the board. And she said, you got them? And I said, yes. Then she erased them. And I couldn't remember them. So for that whole hour the first day, she just kept drilling all of those girls on the brief forms by humiliating me. And I was almost crying. At one point I said, but you guaranteed me an A. And she said, yes, but I didn't say you wouldn't have to work for it.
So you took an FBI entrance test, is that what it was called?
That was D.K. Brown in
Right.
El Paso. And so the FBI hired me on August the 4th,
18 years of age.
1932, and my job was waiting for me in Washington, D.C., so I showed up to take that job. And I got assigned to the security division of the FBI. They had 5 divisions
Under
at that time.
the boss was?
And J. Edgar Hoover was the boss. And so in the security division, it was the same thing. There were all these girls, and I could take shorthand faster than any of them. I also wanted to go to school at George Washington University, so they created a special job for me where I came in at 3 in the afternoon and worked until midnight. And in the security division, Mr. Belmont was head of the security division, which became important later. But anyway, I would take shorthand. Whatever happened in all of the FBI field offices, if they called in, I would take shorthand. And
This was throughout the United States, these field offices.
yes, yes. And so I didn't know at the time, but Mr. Hoover was gay.
Okay, tell me how you met Mr. Hoover.
Well, my first day on the job in Washington, D.C., there were a whole bunch of new hires, and we all lined up on the 5th floor of the FBI building and went into Mr. Hoover's reception room, where he stood there with his limp, really limp handshake. I remember it. And he shook everybody's hand. And that's how I met Mr. Hoover. But then my job was they created a special job for me so I could go to Georgetown University and get a degree. And so I came to work at the FBI at 3 in the afternoon and worked till midnight. And when people would call in from any station in any office, field office of the FBI, I would take shorthand, and so it could get distributed where it needed to go the next morning. And if it was going to go to Mr. Hoover's desk, it could not have an erasure. It had to be perfect.
I remember that.
And so I would get these calls from Los Angeles, and it turns out that, well, if you remember the movie star Van Johnson and Rock Hudson,
Sure.
so the FBI, the headquarters in the security division treated gay people as security risks.
All except
And there were 2 men who ran all of these offices looking after gay people's security risk. And both of them were so embarrassed to talk about sex, they couldn't mention the word sex. Anyway, they wouldn't dictate to girls, they would only dictate to me. And I would go up to their office. As soon as I showed up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd take one of these great big old carts that looked like a shopping cart up to their office. And these two guys would dictate one file after another. They'd put it in my shopping cart, and then once they were done, I would take that down, and it was usually about 5 o'clock. And I had 4 of those big file cabinets just dedicated to me to put those files in for, and all of the girls, every one of the girls in that FBI stenography pool for the security division wanted to read those files. So they would just fight over who got to do my.
Oh yeah, because
they would transcribe my shorthand.
Back
Yeah,
into English.
but every now and then I had to get one perfect, and I would with Mr. Hoover, nobody used blue ink in the whole FBI except Mr. Hoover.
Okay, so the field agents in Los Angeles are dictating.
Well, they would have illegal surveillance, what I know now to be illegal surveillance of movie stars in Los Angeles. And so the agent in Los Angeles, there were two-way mirrors. They would be on one side of the...
These like hotel rooms?
In any event, maybe 3 o'clock in the morning, I knew that was coming. They would alert me. I had to wait on something coming from Los Angeles. So I may get this agent in Los Angeles summarizing the interview with Rock Hudson at 3 or 4 in the morning. And then I had to type it perfectly because you couldn't erase anything that went to Mr. Hoover's desk. And sometimes, even when the girls came to work at 8 o'clock, I would make a mistake on the last line, and they'd have to do it all over. They would have to take it over for me. But the net result was I had all of these file cabinets. I had 4 big file cabinets of files that had to do with sex in the FBI, and all of the girls liked to read what was in those files. So
I do have a question. You said interview. These weren't FBI agents interviewing the various actors like Van Johnson.
they were
They were actually
conducting an illegal surveillance.
of their normal behaviors. Whatever they were doing, they could find out.
Whatever they were, they had dates. They would. I can remember they would go to a restaurant, and the agents would be on the other side of the restaurant. There would be a two-way mirror, so whatever they said, Hoover wanted to know exactly what it was.
Did they ever, in your experience, say anything that affected the security of the United States?
No, no.
So why did Herbert Hoover? I know he
J.
was.
Edgar Hoover.
Why did J. Edgar Hoover? Was he interested in simply because he was gay and he wanted to find out what they were up to?
Those were those. That was his romance. That was his.
He got his rocks.
Rocks off.
I don't know about his rocks.
You don't want to know about his rocks.
That was his entertainment.
But I do know that that existed.
Okay, so little by little you started to realize.
Well, first I worked for Hoover many hours. My salary was $2,400 a year, and in one of my classes at George Washington University, a guy sat next to me who worked for Senator McCarran, and he said, "Your Senator Tom Connally, is head of the Foreign Relations Committee. You ought to get a job with him. You can make a lot more money." So he took me up there one day, and I walked into Senator Connally's office and asked him if they had an opening. And they said, well, get some recommendation letters from El Paso. And so my mother right away sent plenty of recommendation letters. And I went back and she said, you're hired. And without even knowing how fast I could take shorthand. When Senator Connally found out how fast I could take shorthand, the Korean War was going on, and each member of the service would call Senator Connally every time there was a death, so he could alert the people in Texas and say, do something, usually say how proud he is of their son. But anyway, so those guys would dictate what they knew about the kid who died, and I would turn that into a draft of something for Senator Connally to say.
Your early career started off after school with stenography. Then you went to be a pilot. Later on, we know you became a lawyer, and then you became an environmental activist. But I have one final question, has no bearing whatsoever. What happened with the love of your life? Was her name Joan? Or
Jayne.
Jayne. Whatever. Did you ever hear from her again?
You know, Jayne, the answer is no. Jayne wore some perfume. And that part of Mississippi, there's lots of pine trees. Anyway, her perfume smelled just like pine. And every time I smell pine today, I think about Jayne.
Oh, that's beautiful.